provision as dear as in London, clothing much dearer and not so good, and a bad market to choose in."
"I should like to know, then, who is Canada good for?" said she angrily.
"It is a good country for the honest industrious artisan. It is a fine country for the poor labourer, who, after a few years of hard toil, can sit down in his own log house, and look abroad on his own land, and see his children well settled in life as independent freeholders. It is a grand country for the rich speculator, who can afford to lay out a large sum in purchasing land in eligible situations, for if he have any judgment he will make 100 per cent as interest for his money after waiting a few years. But it is a hard country for the poor gentleman whose habits have rendered him unfit for manual labour. He brings with him a mind unfitted to his situation, and even if necessity compels him to exertion, his labour is of little value. He has had a hard struggle to live. The certain expenses of wages and living are great, and he is obliged to endure many privations if he could keep within compass and be free of debt. If he have a large family, and bring them up wisely, so as to adapt themselves early to a settler's life, why, he does well for them, and soon feels the benefit of his own land. But if he is idle himself, his wife extravagant and discontented, and the children taught to despise labour, why, madam, they will soon be brought down to ruin. In short, the country is a good country for those to whom it is adapted; but if people will not conform to the doctrine of necessity and expediency, they have no business in it. It is plain Canada is not adapted to every class of people."
"It was never adapted for me or my family," said the lady disdainfully.
"Very true," was the laconic reply,
and so ended the dialogue. But while I have been recounting these remarks, I have wandered far from my original subject, and left my poor log house quite in an unfinished state. At last I was told it was in a habitable condition, and I was soon engaged in all the bustle and fatigue attendant on removing our household goods. We received all the assistance we required from , who is ever ready and willing to help us. He laughed and called it a moving bee. I said it was a fixing bee, and my husband said it was a settling bee. I know we were unsettled enough till it was over. What a den of desolation is a small house, or any house under such circumstances! The idea of chaos must have been taken from a removal or a setting to rights, for I suppose the ancients had their flitting, as the Scotch call it, as well as the moderns. Various were the valuable articles of crockery ware that perished in their short but rough journey through the woods. Peace to their manes! I had a good helper in my Irish maid, who soon roused up famous fires, and set the house in order. We have now got quite comfortably settled, and I shall give you a description of our little dwelling. What is finished is only part of the original plan; the rest must be added next spring or fall, as circumstances may suit. A nice small sitting room, with a store closet, a kitchen, pantry, and bedchamber, form the ground floor. There is a good upper floor that will make 3 sleeping rooms. What a nutshell! I think I hear you exclaim. So it is at present; but we propose adding a handsome frame front as soon as we can get boards from the mill, which will give us another parlour, long hall, and good spare bedroom. The windows and glass door of our present sitting room command pleasant lake views to the west and south. When the house is completed, we shall have a verandah in front, and at the south side, which forms an agreeable addition in the summer, being used as a sort of outer room, in which we can dine, and have the advantage of cool air, protected from the glare of the sunbeams. The Canadians call these verandahs stoups. Few houses, either log or frame, are without them. The pillars look extremely pretty, wreathed in the luxuriant hop vine, mixed with the scarlet creeper and morning glory, the American name for the most splendid of our major convolvuluses. These stoups are really a considerable ornament, as they conceal in a great measure the rough logs, and break the barn like form of the building. Our parlour is warmed by a handsome Franklin stove with brass gallery and fender. Our furniture consists of a brass railed sofa, which serves upon occasion for a bed, Canadian painted chairs, a stained pine table, green and white curtains, and a handsome Indian mat that covers the floor. One side of the room is filled up with our books; some large maps and a few good prints nearly conceal the rough walls, and form the decoration of our little dwelling. Our bedchamber is furnished with equal simplicity. We do not, however, lack comfort in our humble home; and though it is not exactly such as we could wish, it is as good as, under existing circumstances, we could have. I am anxiously looking forward to the spring, that I may get a garden laid out in front of the house, as I mean to cultivate some of the native fruits and flowers, which I am sure will improve greatly by culture. The strawberries that grow wild in our pastures, woods, and clearings, are several varieties, and bear abundantly. They make excellent preserves, and I mean to introduce beds of them into my garden. There is a pretty little wooded islet on our lake, that is called Strawberry Island; another, Raspberry Island. They abound in variety of fruits, wild grapes, raspberries, strawberries, black and red currants, a wild gooseberry, and a beautiful little trailing plant that bears white flowers like the raspberry, and a darkish purple fruit consisting of a few grains of a pleasant brisk acid, somewhat like flavour to our dewberry, only not quite so sweet. The leaves of this plant are of a bright light green, in shape like the raspberry, to which it bears in some respects so great a resemblance, though it is not shrubby or thorny, that I have called it the trailing raspberry. I suppose our scientific botanists in Britain would consider me very impertinent in bestowing names on the flowers and plants I meet with in these wild woods. I can only say I am glad to discover the Canadian or even the Indian names if I can; and where they fail I consider myself free to become their floral godmother, and give them names of my own choosing. Among our wild fruits we have plums, which, in some townships, are very fine and abundant. These make admirable preserves, especially when boiled in maple molasses, as is done by the American housewives. Wild cherries, also a sort called choke cherries, from their peculiar astringent qualities; high and low bush cranberries, blackberries, which are brought by the squaws in birch baskets, all these are found on the plains and beaver meadows. The low bush cranberries are brought in great quantities by the Indians to the towns and villages. They form a standing preserve on the tea tables in most of the settlers' houses; but for richness of flavour and for beauty of appearance I admire the high bush cranberries. These are little sought after, on account of the large flat seeds, which prevent them from being used as a jam. The jelly, however, is delightful, both in colour and flavour. The bush on which this cranberry grows resembles a guelder rose. The blossoms are pure white, and grow in loose umbels. They are very ornamental, when in bloom, to the woods and swamps skirting the lakes. The berries are rather of a long oval, and of a brilliant scarlet, and when just touched by the frosts are semi transparent, and look like pendent bunches of scarlet grapes. I was tempted one fine frosty afternoon to take a walk with my husband on the ice, which I was assured was perfectly safe. I must confess for the first half mile I felt very timid, especially when the ice is so transparent that you may see every little pebble or weed at the bottom of the water. Sometimes the ice was thick and white, and quite opaque. As we kept within a little distance of the shore I was struck by the appearance of some splendid red berries on the leafless bushes that hung over the margin of the lake, and soon recognized them to be the aforesaid high bush cranberries. My husband soon stripped the boughs of their tempting treasure, and I, delighted with my prize, hastened home, and boiled the fruit with some sugar, to eat at tea with our cakes. I never ate anything more delicious than they proved; the more so, perhaps, from having been so long without tasting fruit of any kind, with the exception of preserves, during our journey, and at Peterborough. Soon after this I made another excursion on the ice, but it was not in quite so sound a state. We nevertheless walked on for about three quarters of a mile. We were overtaken on our